Hey everyone, on this video, I'm going to share data about the multifamily market here in Orange County, sales comps that closed in Q3, but then also properties that are on the market in escrow. We're going to talk about a lot of things multifamily. So if you're an owner of apartment buildings in Orange County, if you're a buyer of apartment buildings in Orange County, this is a good video for you to watch. We've got some good data to go over. So let's dive in real quick. So we pulled 5 units to 100 units within Orange County's market. And the summary, there's a lot of properties sitting on the market, a little bit more elevated than we've usually seen. It's not a shift just in this quarter, it's just been elevated as interest rates have been higher, and a lot of owners, rightfully so, want the best they can for their real estate. They want to get the best price they can, and because pricing is still elevated in a lot of ways, in a lot of sellers' minds, it's causing the days on market to be higher and more properties on the market. So there's a total of 85 properties that are currently on the market right now, between 5 to 100 units in Orange County, and an additional 16 properties that are in escrow, a total of 101 properties. Now, what we are noticing is good real estate is getting picked off, and coastal has the least days on market. So we're seeing a trend there that buyers are flocking to the coast. Buyers are willing to pay up closer to sellers' pricing expectations along the coast. And then we're going to break down the coastal market, the inland Orange County market, and also Santa Ana as its own market. So diving in here a little bit more. Of the properties that are on the market, of those 85 properties, the days on market are about 166 days on the market. That's the ones that have not sold yet. The ones that are under contract, the average days on market is 112 days on market. So it's taking a little longer for these properties to clear. It could be that it's mainly down to pricing, but it could be location. Maybe there's some issues within the physical real estate, or a seller's holding out, hoping that the right buyer comes in and buys their property at the price they're looking for. But again, good real estate is getting picked off in any of these markets. So moving on, transaction volume as a whole market, there was a total of 41 sales. That's pretty much flat. That's what we saw in Q2. So that's on pace. And then breaking down, we're going to go into the coastal market. So the for sale that is broken down of these properties that are on the market, there's 14 that are on the market in coastal Orange County. That's San Clemente all the way up to Seal Beach and everywhere in between. 14 properties that are currently on the market. The average cap rate is 4.3, and the average days on market is 95 days. So a little over 3 months is what the average is taking for these properties. Okay, moving into inland Orange County. Now there's much more properties on the market for sale. There's 47 properties on the market in inland Orange County. We've excluded Santa Ana out of that because that's its own independent market now. The average cap rate is just under 5% for inland Orange County at 4.95%. These again are asking cap rates, and the average days on market is 143 days. So you can see it's starting to tick up a little bit. And moving on to Santa Ana. Santa Ana, again, has its own stricter rent control, so it's this entirely independent market on its own. There's 24 properties just in Santa Ana for sale with an average cap rate of 5.7%. That's asking cap rates. And days on market is elevated at 221 days on the market. Why? We've got stricter rent control. Buyers are more than likely going to want to go into a market that doesn't have rent control, where it's capped at about 2.5% right now. So that's been challenging for Santa Ana, but still properties are clearing the market. Okay, let's move into sales. Let's talk about sales. One thing we mentioned, or we noticed rather, is the smaller properties are leading the way, right? We've pulled this data from 5 to 100 units, but again, looking at it, there's only been 3 properties that sold over $10 million for this quarter. So the other 38 properties were much smaller. The average transaction size was $4,170,000 was the average transaction size throughout all markets, and the average unit size was 12 units. So again, if you're a buyer, this is what's trading. This is what's selling. We start going over 20 units and it just drops off. We start moving into larger deal sizes, it just drops off. I think that's also predicated on just how challenging it is out there in the marketplace. And as we move up the deal size, there's more of a gap sometimes between expectation levels. So I think that's also conducive of the the interest rates being elevated right now, and cap rates are still below, most of the time below the cost of debt. Moving into a few transactions that CBRE did, want to highlight a few. One was a great little property that we sold. We represented a buyer group on. It was a value add property in East Side Costa Mesa, just off 17th Street. Phenomenal location, 22 units, which that deal size is really hard to find within prime East Side. That sold for just under $9.5, or just a little over $9.5 million. That property is going to get renovated and turn around and be a beautiful little gem property. This group's going to go through the renovations currently as we film this video. And then moving on, we sold actually one of the three $10 million plus transactions in the market. This was 33 units that we sold on Clinton Street in Garden Grove. We sold that for just under $13 million. We just shot a video on this, so if you want to get into the specifics on this property, we shot a video on that. But that was a unique property. Again, it was someone that was looking to downsize and simplify. And then we also sold, that was in the family for 40 plus years. We also sold another asset in Garden Grove, 15 units we sold for $4,450,000 on Nutwood, which was a great little property, a lot of single story units, and was also in the family for about 40 years as well. So what's some of the data that we're seeing? What's some of the trends? I would say with some of the trends that we're seeing is, we shot a video about the X Fund. One of these properties that we could tell of the 41 went into the X Fund. We wanted to make note of that. We've also seen, it's hard to track exactly where all the capital is going to go, but I can tell you that a lot of the capital is not going back into multifamily apartment buildings here within the submarket of Orange County. We're seeing a little of that, but it's not much. It's very little 1031 exchange activity back into the market. Now, we saw money come from other parts of Southern California exchanging in Orange County, getting into a better location, getting into better product, kind of simplifying their holdings, but of the total amount of sales, it was very little. Again, it's the fresh capital, people looking for tax savings, or they're entering the market and they find this an opportunity that the market's a little more softer than it was when rates were at all-time lows, and they can come in and get a good value on a property right now. Still, sellers really control. If you've got good real estate, you're in control. Sellers have a lot of leverage. Buyers will step in and want to acquire great real estate because there's just a finite amount of that in the market. So there might take a little bit longer to get it sold, as we've seen the days on market are up, but ultimately sellers have a lot of leverage there. And then again, looking through the data, what are we seeing? Why are people selling? You'll see your typical cash out. You might see people going into alternative investments. They might be exchanging, getting in out of property management, getting into a more passive investment. They might be buying a triple net, single tenant property, retail, passive. They might be going into a DST, again, one X fund deal. But again, it's more kind of looking at it from a bird's eye view. It's simplification. It's simplification. There's so much equity that has been built up in these properties, and the return on equity that a lot of these owners are making is very little because there's so much equity. So it's, comes a point in time in all of our lives to then simplify and really go into something else. So I think we're seeing that happen within the marketplace. But overall, that's a wrap on just talking about the market, looking at the data, seeing the story, what the numbers are telling us, and then we're also entrenched in the marketplace, helping serve customers in the market day in and day out. We're going to put together a report on all this information. If you want to receive that report, reach out. And again, we'll see you on the next video. Thanks so much.